Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, my goodness. Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. Jamorant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. I'm joined on today's episode by Damichael Cole. Damichael, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Keith. Good, happy to be here. You know, it's been a while since I've been on here, but
that's my mistake. I honestly, first of all, I don't have guests that frequently.
Yeah, right.
And then I'm like, I don't want to bother people. That's my main thing. And then I was like, I'd been thinking I wanted to have you back on. And then I was like checking our messages. I was like, did we go the whole year? Like the whole season? So, hey, I was giving you your space. Okay.
Well, you know, and I appreciate it.
You got a lot on your plate.
And oh man, right now, I mean, towards the end of the season, my plate kind of, you know, it wasn't as full, but
The Grizzlies lost again. Can I copy paste anything from the previous loss? Not that you would ever. No, also I had to get you on because I knew I wanted to have you on before the draft. And so that's one thing. But then another, on a recent episode, I did the top YouTube comment on there.
Yeah.
Said, we have to get a Keith and Damichael crossover episode. And I hadn't even thought, I was like, first of all, it's been so long, but you got to give the people what they want.
You got to give the people what they want. Yeah.
Yeah. Damichael, you're of course the beat writer for the Commercial Appeal. I have an assignment for you. Here's something as someone with, boots on the ground in Memphis. As a beat writer, I need you to get the first public quote from Marcus Smart about the Celtics winning the title. Can you do it?
I might can pull that off.
Okay.
I mean, those Boston guys might gotta, he got some good relationships established with some of those guys out there. But I know most recently he's been in Texas. So
okay, yeah, he's not actually around. But it's got to be a lot of. I think it's got to be painful for Marcus and a lot of conflicting emotions because you are happy for your friends and your teammates.
You know what it reminds me of?
What is this?
DeMar DeRozan. Like he had a lot to say. Remember when nothing like
he was hurt when he got traded for Kawhi Leonard. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that situation again, almost.
So and honestly, maybe the comparison is very apt because I think obviously swapping out DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard, that was a big reason why they got over the hump. Also, a Memphis Grizzlies trade of adding a Marc Gasol. Helped out. But then of course, I don't know, if did the Celtics have to trade out Marcus Smart for Drew Holiday? A lot of people think so. I mean, maybe just Porzingis enough, Porzingis could have been enough with Marcus Smart.
That was my hot take. That was my hot take. I was looking at it and I was like, man, if you as talented as they just kind of overkilled it a little bit. We want to be better.
The way the playoffs went, it felt like an overkill. Yeah.
It was we don't want to just be better than everybody. We want to dominate everybody. But Marcus Smart plus Porzingis, we're better than everybody. But no, we got to dominate, everybody. So I think they still accomplished the same thing, but it looks a little bit different when Drew's instead of Marcus.
I mean, I'm a huge Drew believer, and so maybe they could have done it with Marcus. I went back and checked my old Twitter, which is a dumb thing to do. It's very conceited, but I definitely pitched when Drew Holiday got moved to the Trailblazers. I was out there with hey guys, Tyus plus Dylan Brooks plus 2 first rounders. Let's get Drew Holiday. But then of course we got Marcus Smart, and then the Celtics got Drew Holiday. Yeah. It is what it is, Damichael.
It is what it is.
Anyways, so last summer, of course, I was dreaming about, wild trades that never happened. This summer, we are in a similar situation. I think we're all Grizzlies fans and content creators are thinking, these are the options in the draft. And then these are a bunch of trade options, even some maybe free agent some modest free agent options. What right now for you, when you put more of your fan hat on, what's your ideal situation? What's your ideal summer for the Grizzlies?
By subtraction is where I want to start.
Oh, tell me everything. Who are
Yeah.
we getting rid of? That's I didn't think we were starting here. This is great. Okay.
That's the key to this whole thing, because you got to remember right now with Luke Kennard still under contract. You have 14 roster spots filled up. And I like to say 15 because you got a first round pick. That's a guaranteed contract. So that's a guaranteed roster spot. So you're full. Like you pretty much don't have a lot of flexibility to go out and say, oh, we want that guy, we want that guy, we want that guy. What if a guy reaches out and says, I'm interested in the Grizzlies? You can't be interested back. So the first thing you need to address is, how do we move off of certain assets that might not be quote unquote assets to our team, but possibly could be of interest to another franchise. And to me, you have to package it in a way. So the ideal offseason, I think there are a couple players on the roster right now. You look at the rotation and what it could look like. I mean, look, people aren't gonna like to hear this, but it is what it is. Like, the
I
rotation
might like to hear it.
No.
Okay.
This part.
All
But
right,
this is a Taylor Jenkins thing. This isn't a me thing. It's just right now. I don't think that, like, for example, GG Jackson, I think he should be in the rotation. But right now, it's not a certainty that GG Jackson will be in the rotation. Forget starting. It's not even certain that he will be in the rotation, because of the fact that off the bench, you're talking about Luke Kennard, Brandon Clark, Vince Williams. I think those are for certains. Santi Aldama, GG Jackson, that's a conversation, that's going to be had probably a little bit more as we get into the offseason. But Santi has more playing experience at this point. I think GG is definitely, he's going to be the better player easily. But you got two players probably lobbying for one spot there. Everyone else is free game in my mind. Not Derrick Rose, because of the veteran aspect.
Oh, what would we do without that veteran leadership? What, Damichael, what would this team have done last season without the steadying locker room presence of Derrick Rose?
It made a big difference on the court, huh? But I tell you what, it's the point that he's on a minimum deal. So even if you were to trade him, it doesn't do anything for you. So I think you keep him around, but then everyone else should be free game. You should entertain the idea of what teams like the idea of Jake LaRavia going into his third season after he showed a little bit in March and in April, whatever the case may be. Zaire Williams, I think that's the most obvious one that comes to mind. John Conchar is another one where we knew that there was interest at the trade deadline. Specifically, Boston, was a team that I was hearing that had some real interest, in John Conchar. I was thinking more of him to Boston than Xavier Tillman, at that time. But yeah, so I think that's where we got to start. You look at the rotation right now. It's hard to see John Conchar, Zaire Williams, members of it. Jake LaRavia is the younger of the three. John Conchar has the longest contract of the three. So Zaire Williams kind of feels like, he's not the youngest of the group, and he has technically 1 year, left on his deal. I think that's your first option. But who wants Zaire Williams? That's so when you talk about the ideal offseason, here's what I get into. And then I'll kind of like sim through the offseason real fast.
Okay.
Basically, I think you have to start with the idea of 1 at 9. That may be the easiest route to go in terms of trading Zaire Williams. In my opinion, the easiest route. When I say the easiest route, I mean the easiest route to keep your team in a position to be very successful out with that trade. I think you could trade down, not far. You convince a team, 12, 13, 16 in that range, and say, hey, take on this player. We'll swap draft spots with you, and you can work out something that way. And you could still, with this draft class, you look at it from that 10 to 15 range, there isn't a big talent yet. So you probably still get, a decent player. If you want a big, the Khalil Wares, the Zach Edey's, the Yves Misi, Deron Holmes, those guys will be in that range. So you'll have your pick at least probably a couple of them to choose from. So I think that's a good starting point. But to sum up the offseason, Jason, from an archetype standpoint, I think you need to add at least one high-level shooter, possibly two. They don't have to be super main rotation guys. It doesn't have to be someone who's going to be a starter. Because I think there are a couple guys who are in line for 3-point jumps. I think Santi Aldama has not shot particularly well from 3-point range his first, a couple years, like playing more minutes with the Grizzlies. But if you see him shoot the ball in practice and you see the shots he take, a lot of times I look at the shots guys takes and I see those shots. It's like, okay, if he's that confident that he's taking that shot, eventually, things are going to work in his favor. Maybe not the J.R. Smiths and the Dylan Brooks of the world.
That analysis, I don't know if it's right or wrong, Damichael, but I watch the Grizzlies a lot of times and I'm thinking, who gave you that confidence? Like, son, why are you that confident?
Taylor Jenkins is the ultimate green light. Remember, he gave Steven Adams the green light before Steven Adams left. So, I mean, if Steven Adams had the green light, then that should tell you, know, what some of these guys have. But with all that being said, I think you add 1 to 2 shooters. Whether I like a Tyler Smith. In the draft.
Okay, yeah.
If you trade down and you say, DeRon Holmes is off the board, Tyler Smith, those two guys stand out to me as solid bigs. Shoot, Khalil Ware, shot the ball well, decently in college too. So you add, shooting. I know Dalton Knecht is a guy I've talked about a lot as well. So you add shooting and you double up on bigs. I think you double up however you do it. Whether it's if you draft high, you still go get a free agent veteran to add. You double up on bigs, you go get a shooter, and everything else is marginal to me. Maybe you go get a defensive wing. I've talked about the idea of the Grizzlies kind of sneaking their way in some of these potential 3-team deals. We know that the Rockets, they're star hunting right now. The Grizzlies Rockets have a good relationship. Sneak your way into there. Sneak out. Hey, let's get Jae'Sean Tate off you. You don't really need him anymore. Let's go get one of those sneaky wing defenders like that, and you work your way into backdooring your way into a deal. Like if it's the Pelicans and Brandon Ingram deal somewhere. Oh, okay, Najee Marshall. Let's work him into like a sign and trade type of situation or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of where I am at it. I think everything else at this point, pretty marginal. Just get certain because the stars are in place. Like now it's all about complimenting the best players on the team.
Yeah, a couple of those names you said, like Jae'Sean Tate, he might end up being a free agent depending on what the Rockets do with his contract. You hit a lot of stuff. One thing I want to address, I thought we made a really good point. Like we a lot of times just assume guys making progress and then earning these roles in the rotation. And a great example of that is GG Jackson. We're like, oh yeah, he'll be a main guy in the rotation. And in the scenario where the Grizzlies do elect to keep Luke Kennard, if that happens, then you look at the roster and you're like, well, these guys are going to play. And then it's going to be like Vince Williams Jr., Aldama, GG, Laravia, all those guys are fighting for like the 9th spot in the rotation. And so that could be a question. One thing with the roster though, like if we're assuming Yuta Watanabe, it's been reported he took a role on a team in Japan. So like with him leaving, then if you don't pick up Luke Kennard's option, you would have 13 guys, including the draft pick. So you would have 2 roster spots in that situation. And in that way, I mean, one thing I don't talk about much, but like they could definitely add 2 guys to the main roster from this draft. Like maybe if they draft at 39, maybe they move up to 31 or 32 or 29. That's
another thing.
Yeah. And then you end up with 2 roster guys. Although that, honestly, Damichael, that goes to my darkest timeline. I asked you what your best timeline was. My darkest timeline, which I think is so much in play that Grizzlies fans won't even admit it. My darkest timeline is they decline Luke Kennard's option.
Ooh.
They sign a minimum big or a minimum anybody, and then they add 2 guys from this draft to the main roster. And guess what? We dodged the luxury tax. High five, everybody. No luxury tax. Here's your team. You're excited about GG, right? We got jamorant, Desmond Bane, GG Jackson, and Jaren Jackson Jr., and we didn't pay the luxury tax. So that's my darkest timeline, and I think it's a very uncomfortably, it's a likely one. I look at this team not using the MLE the last 2 seasons when they were great and not improving the team through free agency. So like, I'm worried about that. Is that too spicy?
No. Look, because one thing that I envision in that case scenario is you being one of the main people who's going to find that clip of Zach Kleiman saying, should we have what did he say? Did he say quadruple or triple? I think he said
triple down on youth.
Should we have tripled down on youth? And you'd probably be playing it like in your intro or something.
I mean, I think, I don't know how much they care, but they know, like at the very least, grits and grinds guy, he's going to criticize us. Speaking of tripling down on youth, this makes me kind of angry. I don't know. I'm going to make the listeners angry again. There was a trade in the NBA on Thursday. We're recording this on Friday, June 21st, 5 days before the NBA draft. The Thunder ripped off the Chicago Bulls for Alex Caruso. Also, you talked about trading, like maybe like the Bulls don't seem that bright. Could we give them Zaire Williams? Would you just take Zaire Williams? We'll take the 11th pick. Hey, well, you want to trade, we'll let you move up 2 spots if you take Zaire Williams. I'm like, oh, yeah, they can sell it. But anyways, here's what I don't like. The Thunder got better. I don't like that. But also, they definitely got better. I think Grizzlies fans, we've been kind of indignant when we see that the Thunder's success, and we were like, we were there. That was us 2 years ago. Yep. And I think that's a fair comparison. Like, that's the super young team. They were the 1 seed because of like the final day of the year. We were the 2 seed. But here's where I get kind of angry. Like, that Thunder team did not take our path. They did not triple down on youth. They went and got a better player. They already traded for a 29-year-old defensive 3-and-D guy. So I'm like, just imagine if we traded for a good player after our 56-win season, as opposed to
it was there. The opportunity
was there. The opportunities were there.
They went to the draft.
If the Grizzlies keep the 9th pick, or even that trade up. Oh, actually, let's hit the Rockets thing, because you mentioned this Rockets trade. Yeah. There is some smoke, although I don't know how much of it is true. Kelly Iko of The Athletic basically said that, first of all, he repeated the thing about the Grizzlies being interested in donovanclingan, and then said the Rockets have fondness towards Marcus Smart, because Kelly covers most closely the Rockets for The Athletic. I don't see exactly how that trade would even work, because that would be a situation where they'd have to give us Jayshawn Tate, I guess. They can't even trade us Steven Adams back. That's not legal. Can they trade us? How much? Like, if we wait to mid-July, they can give us Dylan Brooks back, I think. Is it 12 months have passed? But again, that would never happen. So I like to make it even possible. They'd have to pick up, I believe, Jock Landale's contract. They'd have to pick up, like, maybe they could send us Jeff Green. All of these things are, and you mentioned the roster spots anyways. We're not taking back all these guys. I mean, you could, and then you could cut them, and we could eat salary that way. But like, I don't think there's much there. But do you think there's any smoke or any accuracy to this? Also, I will ask you, furthermore, what have you heard about the Grizzlies' willingness to even trade Marcus Smart? Because that is something that a lot of people talk about. I mention it constantly. Like, do you have any concept of even that's something they would be willing to entertain?
Yeah, so I'll start here. You're gonna. And this is probably, as long as Zach Kleiman is here and the Grizzlies are in this window, this is pretty much the situation. The Grizzlies operate from what I like to call like a controlled aggressiveness. And what that means is you're going to hear, oh, the Grizzlies are rumored to want to move up. The Grizzlies are talking to this team. They're talking to that team. They're going to be in all the conversations. I say just take it as, hey, they're doing their due diligence. People hear those things and they run with it, because that's what we tend to do. But it's basically, to me, it's just doing your homework. That's what they're doing. They want to entertain the idea of moving up to number 3, because they know that one of the bigs that they want is probably not going to be there at 9. It doesn't mean they are going up there and say, hey, whatever you want, you just let us know and we're willing to do it. No, they're just trying to, hey, let's fill it out. What do you want in this deal? It's kind of a fill out process. They're not even just talking to the Rockets, they're talking to other teams, as well. So it's kind of a controlled aggressiveness. They're just trying to fill it out. What will it take? What will they need? And that's going to be the theme pretty much throughout the offseason from how the Grizzlies operate. So you're going to hear those conversations on the end. So there is legitimacy to the idea that the Grizzlies, are interested in trading up and whatnot. But I wouldn't take it as like, they're aggressively like seeking out number 3 by any means necessary or anything. Because the Rockets, I talked to Kelly Iko actually about this, and he was saying that, the Rockets, they ain't taking pennies back, for this number 3 pick. And if that's the case, the Grizzlies aren't in a position to give up what I think the Rockets would like at number 3. So, I mean, the only way, you talked about it is could it happen more so with the Marcus Smart idea, because I don't see that happening. I'll get to Marcus Smart in a second. But like the only way I could see the Grizzlies even getting in the number 3 case scenario is if a 3-team trade. It'd have to be a situation where it's 3 teams involved potentially, because the Rockets are star hunting. That's been reported out there, and it makes sense. Just look at the roster. They got 4 or 5 young guys to build around. They got these other vets. So the number 3 pick really doesn't move the Rockets into the top 10 of the West like they want to be. But moving to the Marcus Smart thing, I don't get the sense that the Grizzlies are trying to trade him.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I'll say on that regard is that the fact that when Marcus Smart came here, the idea was this is something the Grizzlies need. They don't have that lockdown perimeter defender who can take the A option, the number 1 option on the opposing team, whether it's a point guard, shooting guard, or small forward. Marcus Smart gave them that guy after Dillon Brooks left. But as we saw last season, certain guys kind of developed. You found the fact that Vince Williams, he's guarding Luka, he's guarding Kevin Durant, and they're all giving him praise. So he can be that type of guy. Gigi Jackson, as we saw as the season went on, he's not ready yet. But I mean, they put him in those situations because they believe he can be that type of defender. Once he gets a little bit stronger, maybe his age 21, 22 season, somewhere around there, he can be that type of defender. So with all that being said, it leads you more to believe that when Marcus Smart first got here, he was a need. Couldn't do it without him. Now he's a want. He's a strong want. Like he's that one that you really want. You don't want to let him go at all, but you see the pathway if he's not here. Okay, yeah, you got a Vince Williams can guard, the top guys and whatnot. But that's not something the Grizzlies are ready to do, in my opinion. I have not heard outside of the chit chat on the socials. I haven't heard anything on a legitimate front that the Grizzlies are interested in moving Marcus already.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's like, if you believed them what they said last summer when they acquired them, which I always take those post-trade press conferences like a grain of salt. Like, of course, you're going to say, this is the one guy we never ever dreamed. We never dreamed he'd be available. We had a whiteboard we created 3 years ago. We said if we could have any player, and it was Marcus Smart. So like if they do just see what they have. Like, that's the whole thing. We never got to see what they had last year. It was underwhelming when jamorant wasn't there. The Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr., it didn't work. I mean, offensively, it was bad. Defensively, it was pretty good, but like it never worked. So maybe patience is the way to go, and they want to see what they have, and they wouldn't, include Marcus Smart for a deal. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back. I want to ask you more about who specifically you might hope the Grizzlies target on draft night. Underdog Fantasy is a unique way to play fantasy sports for cash. You can do daily fantasy tournaments, you can play best ball, you can do higher or lowers. I've been using Underdog Fantasy for over a year. I use it mainly for the NBA and NFL, but they have every single sport. And now, if you sign up for Underdog Fantasy using my promo code FBBF, Underdog will match your opening deposit up to $250. Again, that's promo code FBBF, as in Fast Break Breakfast. So if you want to give Underdog Fantasy a try, use that promo code or click the link in this episode's description. All right, so Damichael, if the Grizzlies don't trade Marcus Smart to move up drastically, or whatever, let's say they stay roughly around 9. Maybe they move up to 7 or even 5. But who are you hoping in this draft class the Grizzlies come home with?
It's primarily two options here, and shooting in the big. We've talked a lot about the need for the bigs, right? Zach Kleiman even came out and said it, so he kind of ushered this whole conversation about the need for a big. But one thing he didn't say was the shooting part, and he didn't say it this time. But shooting is if big is 1A, shooting is 1B. Mm-hmm. They know at this point they need more shot makers, because I'm here to tell anybody out there, no matter what big in the entire NBA, except the 2 or 3 alphas at center, outside of those guys, they can go get prime Dwight Howard. They're still going to have the same problems.
They can also get 33-year-old Dwight Howard, or however old he is.
They could, in theory. And no matter how dominant, forceful, rebounder, rim runner, big you go get, the same problems are going to present themselves from the standpoint. You get to the playoffs, teams pack the paint, and you're saying, Desmond Bane, please make 8 threes. If you don't, we don't know what's going to happen. And you're scoring 85 points. And that problem is going to continue unless you address the need for shooters. The Grizzlies know that they need shooters. This is not something that they're blind to. In fact, the last 2 off seasons, this has been a strong point. Kyle Anderson, they loved him as a player. The only reason Kyle Anderson wasn't brought back was because Santi Aldama's shooting profile. Not because Santi Aldama was a better player. They wanted to space the floor more. And the idea was we need better complementary players around our core guys. So Santi and Kyle, I use that example because that's a solid example in that case where Kyle is playing, good playoff minutes, for a team that probably feel like they should have won the West. Whereas Santi Aldama, was not standing out, towards the end of the season when he was on the floor with a bunch of guys on 10-day contracts. But at the same time, from a complimentary standpoint, that's what the Grizzlies wanted around their guys. So I think, the most important thing here is you're gonna target Donovan Clingan. That's option 1A. Outside of him, I think, Reed Shepherd, he's an interesting one to target because if the Rockets don't get him at 3, it'll be interesting to see, what happens. Even though I don't think he makes it to 9 by any chance. But again, another name to monitor, and then Dalton Knecht. That's the one I recently, mocked to the Grizzlies and whatnot. And he's even become sort of a riser on boards as of late. There's a chance he could go as high as 6, to a team like Charlotte. So those 3 guys stand out as those are your A options. If none of them are available, then you gotta do a little bit more homework. To me, you take a couple swings, like Stephon Castle stands out on the next level. If we're talking at 9, Stephon Castle gives you that perimeter defender, another perimeter defender that you're gonna need. And so depending on who you talk to, I've talked to some people that think his shooting will eventually, project well into the league. He's probably going to be one of those guys who starts off, shooting 32, 33% and eventually becomes a 37, percent three-point shooter. You just gotta wait it out. And I don't know if that's the position the Grizzlies want to be in, but he is a talented player. And other than that, when you options, a lot of guys make a lot of sense to me. I mentioned Tyler Smith. Khalil Ware is one that, I've been on the forefront about for a while now in terms of a rim running big. He can block shots, can shoot the basketball and things like that. He was the number 2 ranked big in his class. Derek Lively was number 1 because he played 2 years in college. He was number 2. So if you get some Derek Lively type impact, from him, that's a win. So those are the prospects that stand out to me as far as the first round targets. I mean, and you mentioned it earlier too, and because we haven't talked about it a lot, but they pick at 39. 39 usually isn't like a two-way player. 39 is still very much in that someone you sign but ends up getting a guaranteed contract type of range. There are some good players. Like if they just put their heads down and say, we want a big no matter what in the first round, and we want Edie, or we want, Khalil Ware, Yves Misi, or one of those guys, I'm fine with it if at 39 you could get your hands on like a Baylor Shireman, who was arguably one of the top shooters in the draft as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of I'm starting to think that with that second round pick that I think you're going to be able to just maybe with just cash be able to move up a few spots. I think there's a lot of teams they're going to have too many picks. The Jazz have a lot of picks to move. I think the Pacers maybe at the second round. But anyways, I think you're gonna be able to move up. I think I'm starting to think that second draft pick, if kept, could be the big, because I just feel like the way the draft is breaking, you're maybe not going to want to use that 9th pick. But also one thing I think names that I think I haven't mentioned that I think need to be mentioned more in the Grizzlies sphere in a trade up scenario, it's not Clingan. For me, it's like you said, it may be Reed Shepherd, but also Alex Sarr. So because like we're seeing the stuff that, maybe the Hawks are going to go Ricochet or Clingan. And if that happens, and then like say they take Clingan, maybe Clingan is the secret number 1 overall pick. Then if the Wizards say, yeah, we'll take Ricochet. Then if Sarr is there at 3, that's that is more of a prototypical big for the modern NBA maybe where Clingan is not. I think that's the aggressive. Let's go get it. So that's something I keep thinking about.
I'm
Also,
fine with Jaren at the 5 if you put him.
I mean, Sarr and Jaren, that's modern baskbasketball. You're going to need you're going to need to have Vince grab probably 10 to 12 rebounds a game, playing at the 3 spot, but still
he's willing to do it.
He's willing. We've seen it. So like, that's something I'm thinking about. Also a couple of maybe other like trade up opportunities. And then we can wrap up with this. Some of the rumors that are out there. The Pistons, of course, they fired Monty Williams. Yep. Trajan Langdon today on Friday, June 21st, is doing his like welcome press conference or whatever. Yep. But like the Pistons, there's been this rumor, I don't know how verifiable it is, that like they're going to make a run at Nick Claxton. And that's weird because again, they have Jalen Duren, they have Isaiah Stewart, guys who can play the 5. So like, that's another team where it's like, oh, if you're going for Claxton, what do you want for the 5th pick? Or what do you want from either like Duren or even, again, I'm more comfortable with modest trades. My dream off season, let's be real, is them picking up the Luke option and trading him for any big, like any big that makes about $10 to $15 million. If we could pull that off, I feel like it's honestly very unlikely, but like, I'd be happy with that. Like an Isaiah Stewart would fit that.
Would you take a Wendell Carter?
Of course. Like I honestly was asking some of my Patreon supporters in our Slack channel. I'm like, name me a big making $10 to $15 million where I wouldn't be okay with the Grizzlies trading just Luke Kennard straight up. Again, Luke Kennard provides that valuable shooting you talk so much about, but when I look at like, if we're keeping Marcus Smart, when I look at the depth chart, I'm thinking
it's not a lot of space.
I'm like, we need someone who's way better than Santi Aldama to play 5, And so I was like, name a guy, Marvin Bagley. Okay, fine. Like honestly, any big, I was like, that's the challenge. Name me someone making I think like Jared Vanderbilt. I was like, he's like, like he would be useful for the Grizzlies, but he can't shoot. He's undersized. I know he would gobble up all those rebounds that no one else was grabbing, but still, I was like, name me a guy. The problem being, I don't think other teams are taking a 1-year expiring contract, Luke Kennard. I don't think it matters that much to him. Are there any other like rumors out there that you think we should go over, or any other even fallout? Like, I feel like one of the bad things for the Grizzlies right now, like the Thunder got better with Alex Caruso. Also, apparently Paul George maybe not going to go to the Sixers. Flat out, if Paul George stays in Los Angeles, that's, in my mind, that's bad for Memphis. The Warriors might be keeping Klay Thompson. Like, maybe you think that's not addition by subtraction, but like I wanted people to go to the East. I wanted players to go to the East, and now it's all like, oh, and Jimmy Butler, according to Howard Beck, likely to get traded. Like, I don't want Jimmy Butler coming to the West. So I don't know. Is there anything else in the shakeup of the whole league that you're thinking of right now as far as how it affects the Grizzlies?
I mean, I think in the next couple weeks, what tends to happen in the NBA, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, is teams overreact. And they make sometimes what look like panic moves, and sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. One that I think that probably worked out was Boston was like, look, man, we cannot get over the hump. Let's trade our former defensive player of the year. And you're like, huh? But, at the time, they didn't think they were going to get Drew Holiday, back. But it worked out. So, I'm looking at the teams that are on that second tier in the West, what they're going to do. I want to see, like Phoenix. That first year was terrible for them. But I'm not one of those, like, I try to be a logical basketball mind. I'm not one of those. Phoenix is doomed because who knows? Like, some people were saying the Timberwolves were doomed. That first year, oh man, Rudy Gobert and Cat, it doesn't work. They're doomed for the future. And next thing you know, they're in the Western Conference Finals. So, and people were saying Kyrie and Luka, when they got Kyrie at the deadline, and it was like, oh, they can't even make the play-in. They're doomed, and then they make the finals. So that's one team that comes to mind. I want to see what the Pelicans are going to do. They finally have wrapped it up in their heads that this Brandon Ingram Zion thing is an imperfect pairing. Now, how do you adjust accordingly? But yeah, I want to see what that second level of Western Conference teams do. But more on the Grizzlies front, from the draft standpoint, Devin Carter, he's become a riser, and no team knows him better. So yeah.
Well, I mean, once the Grizzlies draft Devin Carter, then you can do my Marcus Smart for Andrew Wiggins trade. Your roster makes a lot more sense. No, you mentioned those secondary guys in the West. A team I should have mentioned was the Kings, who, again, just breaking news. they kept Malik Monk.
Yep.
That's bad for the Grizzlies. Like I think the general NBA world thought the Magic were going to do some kind of massive, either like a 2-year balloon, massive overpay, or at the very least like a 4-year, $100 million deal. The Kings retaining Malik Monk, a guy who made tremendous strides last season, that is huge for them. And like Grizzlies fans can be mad or whatever at ESPN that we're 19th in their offseason power rankings. But like you look at the Kings, I think you say we're right there with the Kings, like the Kings just kept a guy, and that's bad. I think it's bad for the Grizzlies. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of down on it. Last thing, who's your most under the radar free agent guy? Let's say we either sign Luke to a smaller contract or Luke Kennard moves on, and they can use some of their mid-level exception. Is there any guy out there, maybe even non-big category? Is there a shooter? Is there anybody else here like, man, if that guy signed for $8 million on the Grizz, I'd be ecstatic.
Not 8 million. Not that quite. But I mean,
go lower.
I go under the radar. I'm going down into like the basements, like in Kansas, like on tornado season or something like. Goga Bitadze.
Everyone talks about Goga. I'm not trying to put,
that's too easy.
It's too easy. Everyone wants Goga Bitadze for the minimum. I think it's going to cost more, but no, give me somebody else. Cause I'll be real. The Goga to the Grizzlies thing. It's all I hear nonstop. I've been talking about it. I know you've been talking about it. Give me a deal. You didn't go into any tornado. What is that shelter? Like, give me a bomb shelter deeper cut. Give me a fallout underneath the Earth's surface.
Under the radar. Tell you what, if you part with Luke Kennard, and you go get that big, let's say
those things are going to happen because they are. But anyways, keep going.
Eric Gordon.
Yeah. Why not?
Guard.
Yeah.
A lot of 3-point shots, spacing guy. His defensive numbers. I mean, he's like a anomaly with the defensive stuff because
he's stout. He's like a linebacker.
Yeah. His numbers don't look great, but when you see him, he slides his feet really well. Like you say, he's stout. He guards bigger guys at 6'3", 6. But the main thing is you want shooting additions. And here's the difference between Luke Kennard and Eric Gordon. Here's why at the time, the Clippers made that trade and got Eric Gordon and shipped out Luke Kennard is because of the fact he's a playoff shot maker too. I mean, he had some bad games with the Rockets during those years, but it's because he takes a lot of wildly deep 3-pointers. But the thing with Luke Kennard is he struggles with physicality, something he said himself. And basically just saying he has to be more physical against certain defenses and things like that. And when they play the more physical defense in the NBA, look at his numbers. Watch the last few games when they played the Clippers. Watch the playoff series against the Lakers. Luke Kennard struggles to get free, struggles to get shots. And even though he was a plus on the floor during that Lakers series, it wasn't because he was making 4 or 5 3-pointers. It was just because, the spacing element that he added. But I think Eric Gordon, under the radar, not going to cost a lot. Just had a really solid season, with the Suns. That's another, bench scores Grizzlies need. He's a guy who can, you can put the ball in his hands a little bit. And Desmond Bane at one point was kind of getting some comps to him, like the
very
earlier,
much so. Yeah,
the earlier Eric Gordon. So I think that'll be a fun under the radar one we haven't really heard much about. I did see the other day that the Suns are unlikely to bring him back. So that's one I'd monitor.
I like that a lot. We could get maybe the promotions department could work out like a Desmond Bane, Eric Gordon arm wrestling competition. I feel like that would be. I mean, Baines is aesthetically the bigger, stronger arms, but I want to see if that's real strength against like an old man Eric Gordon who's proven.
He got that old man, grown man strength.
Yeah,
he took down a couple beers and.
Yeah, that's the showdown I want to see. Anyways, Damichael, thanks so much for coming on. I'll have to get you back on much sooner next time. You guys, of course, I'm sure you're listening to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm sure you're checking out Damichael's stuff at the Commercial Appeal, so do that. And Damichael, am I gonna see you in Vegas? You gonna be there?
I hope so.
Okay, cool.
I'm planning on it. So,
yeah, awesome, man. Well, we'll see you there, and I look forward to you coming on again sometime.
All right, take care, Keith.